Hello, everyone. Welcome to Liberty Bytes. This is Matt McGowan sitting in for William Gadsden. Please follow Think Liberty on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and follow the Think Liberty Podcast Network on iTunes, Stitcher, and anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Now, today I'd like to try something a little bit different. In previous editions of Liberty Bytes that I've sat in on, I've often talked to libertarians about libertarian issues. Today, I'd like to talk to our friends, and by our friends, I mean our non-political friends who see the posts that we put up on Facebook and probably have some questions that sometimes they really don't want to ask, but maybe want answers to. And one of the questions that I'm getting most this particular week from my quote-unquote normie friends is about Julian Assange. Now, of course, to our libertarian listeners, I don't really need to go into Assange. We all know what WikiLeaks is about, what is most concerning about his arrests, and how we feel about free speech in general. But I know that there are a lot of different views, particularly among those who aren't as involved in politics as many of us are, and they maybe have a little bit different opinion of Mr. Assange. You know, there's plenty of news stories about him, and one of the things that I want to be clear about is I'm not here to defend the man himself. I know that he was wanted on charges stemming from sexual assault and accusations of rape, and to be fair, those charges were dropped. However, there's been plenty of news coverage on Mr. Assange that, you know, you can look at some of the things that he's been involved in and you can say he's not a great guy, or that he's likely not the kind of person that you want your daughter bringing home or anything like that. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So for the benefit of those who may not be as familiar, Julian Assange is an Australian journalist. He is the founder and director of WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks is famous for, among other things, releasing some documents during the Iraq War, which showed that the United States had underreported the amounts of civilian deaths, that basically the image of the war that they were portraying to us wasn't necessarily what was occurring. More recently, WikiLeaks was at the center of the controversy regarding President Trump and the charges that he had colluded with Russia based on information provided by WikiLeaks. So back when he released the information during the Gulf War, the United States begun an investigation into how he had obtained that information. Folks may remember Chelsea Manning being at the center of that controversy as releasing all this information to WikiLeaks. So during that time, he was also charged with sexual assault and rape in Sweden. Now, many people, not the least among them Assange, felt that these charges were a trumped-up attempt to arrest him under a false pretext to be held accountable for leaking the information from Private Manning. So when he was arrested, he made bail naturally, and then he went to the embassy for Ecuador in London and claimed political asylum. He was granted asylum in 2012 and spent the next 7 years at the Ecuadorian embassy living as a guest of the Ecuadorian government. Apparently here lately, he had begun to wear out his welcome with his hosts. And so earlier this week, the London police arrested Assange at the embassy. He was charged not only with bail violations from his original request for asylum at the Ecuadorian embassy, but he also was charged by the United States with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion, as he had allegedly attempted to assist Private Manning in hacking the government systems that eventually provided the treasure trove of information on the Iraq War that was released by WikiLeaks. Now, a lot of you who are listening to this who come from outside the liberty movement are probably right now saying, good, we're glad he was caught. He released private information that could have put soldiers at risks, and he helped Trump collude with Russia, and he's the reason that we have the big, mean orange guy in the White House right now. And while that's certainly an understandable way to feel for a lot of folks, it's important that we take a close look at just what was released when we judge Julian Assange. Now, among the things that came to light were a graphic video of a U.S. Apache helicopter killing Iraqi civilians, along with 2 Reuters journalists. There was a 90,000 plus pages worth of military memos that were released, known as the Afghanistan War Diaries, that showed that the Taliban and the Pakistani government were in regular contact and that civilian casualties were far greater than the U.S. officially acknowledged. Now, remember, during these years, we were told time and time again how the Pakistani government was an ally. And a lot of the information that came to light as a result of the information released by Assange showed us that that wasn't accurate. There were also 400,000 pages of documents about the war in Iraq, including the revelation of 15,000 unreported civilian deaths and brutal reprisals by the Iraqi forces upon their own people. Things that we were told were not indeed happening were actually occurring, and they were withheld from the American people, despite the fact that there were people who were screaming that these things were occurring and were largely ignored, both by the mainstream media as well as politicians. So flash forward to 2016, when WikiLeaks released hacked emails from John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, which showed essentially that the Democratic primaries were being hijacked by Clinton's team away from Bernie Sanders. Now, the reaction to this one befuddles me more than anything. You have a candidate in Bernie Sanders who definitely, much like Trump, grabbed the common voters' attention and rallied them in a way we have not seen for quite some time. This is a guy who legitimately could have been the president of the United States. And instead, what you got was a political party so corrupt that they essentially thwarted the will of their voters to install their chosen candidate, a candidate who was so terrible that she lost to the one person that nobody figured anyone could lose to, Donald J. Trump. But instead of getting mad at the DNC, people want to blame WikiLeaks. And that's really the larger point of this whole podcast. People don't like Assange, and it's certainly understandable why. But WikiLeaks provided a valuable service to the American people. And that was a glimpse behind the curtain at what the people who control this country are actually doing and how different it is from what we are being told they do. Instead of cheering when someone like Julian Assange is arrested, and make no mistake, they are going to go after him full bore. They are attempting to send a message to any other would-be whistleblowers about what awaits them if they dare take the task that Assange took. And we, the people, are giving them cover to do so. This is why libertarians get so passionate about Assange. Freedom of press and the freedom of speech are the last things we have, the last line of defense to speak out against the government that continues to go further and further away from what's best for the people of this country. When someone like Assange is threatened, we are all threatened, and we should all speak out, regardless of our politics, regardless of our background. Anytime somebody who blew the whistle on the United States government for things that it did legitimately wrong, anytime someone like that is threatened, we should all speak out with one voice, saying, hell no.